Hello and welcome Year 11s to your Psychology Taster session. My name is Mrs. Smith. I'm the psychology teacher here at South Hunsley, and over the next half hour we're going to explore different aspects of what is psychology, but also allowing you to gain a little bit of an insight into what A-level psychology is all about. Now, before you get started, I need you to make sure you have a pen and some paper because we have a collection of tasks for you to do, and for you to fully enjoy the experience, I'd like you to partake in them. Pause the video now so that you can get yourself organised. So the first task that we're going to do is true or false. I'm going to give you a collection of statements and you've got to think to yourself, is this statement true or is this statement false? Now, some of them will definitely be linked to psychology and others not so. So let's get your thinking caps on and ready to play the game. You don't need to write your true or false down on this one, just in your head. Say to yourself, is that true or is it false? Here's your first statement. Taxi drivers have larger brain regions associated with memory in comparison to non-taxi drivers. Do you think that statement is true or false? What do you think? Well, if you said true, you're spot on. Psychological research by McGuire et al. Actually found that taxi drivers have significantly larger hippocampuses. Now that's the part towards the center of the brain that is associated with memory. So they found that was significant, I'm getting tongue-tied there, significantly larger compared to non-taxi drivers. Statement number 2. Playing brain training games on Nintendo DS or other devices increase the connections in the brain and improves memory and IQ. What do you think? Is it true or false? Well, it's actually false. An article by Novella actually provides evidence against the belief that brain training games increase intelligence. What they do that psychological research has found is that actually they keep the brain stimulated, and that is a good thing, but it doesn't actually increase a person's IQ. Are you ready for statement number 3? Here we go. If one monozygotic twin suffers from depression, okay, let me stop before I go any further so you understand what we mean by monozygotic. I know some of you may have never come across this word. Monozygotic is the proper scientific name for an identical twin. Mono means one, so that means there has been one fertilizer egg that's split into two, so they will be identical. Just to give you that bit more information, if we talk about a non-identical twin, we talk about a dizygotic twin. So that means during conception, it was 2 eggs that were fertilized and therefore share 50% of the same DNA. Okay, so now we understand what monozygotic means. Let's go back to the statement. If one monozygotic twin suffers from depression, there is an approximately a 45% chance that the other monozygotic twin will suffer from depression. What do you think? True or false? You've got it. It's true. McGuffin et al. Found a concordance rate of 45% in monozygotic twins for major depression compared to that of the concordance rate of 20% for dizygotic twins. So here we can actually see, because monozygotic twins share 100% the same genetic or DNA makeup, there is a higher chance if one develops a mental disorder, so does the other. Statement number 4. Listening to Mozart, remember Mozart is classical music, improves concentration. What do you think? Listening to classical music, if we even just state it that way, improves concentration. True or false? What do you think? I'll give you a moment. Well, it is actually false. That's right. Steele et al. Reports a failure to replicate the Mozart effect in research. Now, the Mozart effect was, it was believed that if you played classical music when people were doing a task that required concentration, actually it would enhance their memory recall. Well, actually, when they did this and they replicated it under scientific conditions, they found that it doesn't support. There's no evidence to support the intellectual programs based on the existence of the Mozart effect. So what this piece of research said, for those organizations who use classical music as their foundation to enhance concentration, the researchers didn't find that evidence. Now, moving on to our final statement, statement number 5. Psychology is a science. True or false? What do you think on this one? The answer to this one is true. Psychology is the scientific study of behaviors and mental functions. So what does that mean? It means psychology is a science, like any other science. It's about studying the mind and human behavior. How a person thinks, how a person feels, how a person interacts with the world, a person's background experience, their biology, all of these are linked together to account for human behavior. And psychology is the scientific study of this. Just like all your other natural sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, psychology studies human behavior using the scientific methods of investigation to allow us to get empirical data, that means research support, to back up all our theories, to explain why a person behaves in a certain way. Right, here comes our next task, and in this task you will need pen and paper. So pause the video now if you still don't have any pen and paper. Please, you want a blank piece of paper for this task with no writing on it. It can have lines on it, that's fine, but no other writing. Pause now and get yourself organized. Right. This is a simple task. On your blank piece of paper, I would like you to draw a pig. Now, I'm not looking for Picasso here because believe me, my pig drawing skills are rubbish. I am not an artist, so you don't need to be an artist. All I want you to do is pause the video and give yourself about 2 minutes to draw your pig. You can even give your pig a name, but draw your pig. So pause the video now. Right, I'm glad you've paused the video and you've drawn your pig. Now, let's use your pig to tell us about your personality. So what does your pig say about you? Okay, I'm only going to bring up 5 or 6 points here, but these 5 or 6 points may tell you something about who you are according to how you've drawn that pig. Now, if you have drawn the pig towards the top of your piece of paper, it states that you are a positive, optimistic person. You see the world as a glass half full rather than half empty. It also states if you've drawn your pig towards the middle of the paper, you're a realist. And that means you see things for what they are. If you have drawn your pig towards the bottom of the paper, you are a pessimist and have a tendency to be negative. So you might be that person whose glass is half empty. I always say that's like an E, oh no. What's happened now? It's a bit of an ER thing. Or if you now, so it's on those first three, where you've drawn it, top, middle, and bottom, tells us something about you. Now, let's say if you've drawn your pig facing left, you are traditional, friendly, and good at remembering dates, including birthday. So you like traditional things, you have a good memory recall, and you like to make sure you do recall people's memories and do those nice things. If you've drawn your pig facing forward or angled forward, you are direct. That means you tell it as it is. You enjoy playing the devil's advocate, and what that means, you like to stir a little bit. Even if you don't quite believe in what you're saying, you just like to stir to see people's reactions. And also, you never fear nor avoid discussions. You like to be involved in discussions and debate because you like to get your opinion across. And finally, if you drawed, that's a great word, if you have drawn your pig facing right, you're an innovative and active, but do not have a strong sense of family, and you're not good at remembering dates. Now, innovative, you like to come up with some ideas, and you're perhaps a little bit of creativity there, right? You don't have a strong sense of family. Now, that means that if you missed your brother's birthday, that's okay, right? You still believe and want your family, but you don't see them as the most important thing. Do you think this pig that you have drawn represents you? Now, a lot of us do these magazine quizzes. That, when will you find your true love? Or what type of car is associated with your personality? We do them that are in the magazines. Now, this one is kind of like one of them. Is it based on any truth? And the big answer is, what do you think? The big answer is no. These, what you'll find in magazines, even if they say, they've been psychologically tested, I can guarantee they're there to fill up some pages in the magazine to make you want to buy the magazine so that you can find out what the type of person you are. A simple magazine task like this one is not going to tell you. Because human behavior, according to psychology, is very complex. It's not about drawing a picture. It's not about answering 20 simple little questions. We are complex animals. We engage differently. Today you could be happy, tomorrow you could be sad, and that emotion will affect how you behave. And in psychology, we need to understand why people behave the way they do. What makes a person who they are? What makes them tick, really? And that's why we need to study human behavior scientifically, because science allows us to get closer to the truth, to say, here's the facts to explain this. So coming back to personality, we've looked at the pig task and it's a bit of fun, but personality in psychology is scientifically investigated, and we now want to look at how we explain it. Now, what you need to be aware of, unlike the natural sciences of chemistry, biology, and physics, where they have one clear answer for a particular reaction or for a particular process, psychology, we can look at one behavior or one thing, for example, personality, but we have different types of psychology. For example, the psychodynamic, the cognitive, the behaviorist, the biological. Just to mention a few of them, they will all explain personality quite differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at a couple of them and just explain to you briefly how they would explain how your personality develops and what is your personality. So it's really important that if you want to take A-level psychology, you need to have an awareness that if we're looking at a particular behavior, depending on the type of psychology, it will then depend on how we explain that behavior. either developing or occurring. Now, the first theory of personality that we're going to be looking at is the psychodynamic approach. Now, the psychodynamic approach says that we are born with a certain element of our personality. And as you can see here, it's the id. It's not ID, it's the id. This is the part of our personality that deals with our instincts. We're born with it. It helps us survive. But it's also the part that's very selfish. It's all about me, myself, and I. So we're born with this one because it helps motivate a young infant, young baby to cry a lot to get what it wants and it needs. But if we're brought up and our parents, according to the psychodynamic, are always giving us what we want, we might become that selfish individual because of our id that has been overdeveloped. Now, as we grow older, the other two parts of our personality, according to the psychodynamic approach, develop, and these are the ego and the superego. Now, these are developed by how we're socialized and brought up. Now, the ego itself develops around about the age of 2. 2 years old, we start to develop it. And this one's based on the reality principle. What is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So it allows us to understand that it's okay to be a little bit selfish, but not completely. It's okay to tell a little white lie if it's going to help someone. So this is the part of our personality that allows us to understand what's acceptable within our society and what's not. Now, this is done by how we're brought up by our parents. Now, if our parents have a distorted sense of reality, that means they're going to raise us to have a distorted sense of reality. Where we can see that will then impact on our personality. Our third part of our personality is the superego. Now, the superego develops around about the age of 5. Now, this is based on what is called the morality principle. What is right and what is wrong. A lie is a lie. Telling a porky or a fib, whatever you call it at home, it is wrong, even if it's a little white lie to help somebody. Stealing a penny or stealing £1 million is wrong. So this is the part of our personality that develops what is right and wrong. If we were brought up in a house that was exceptionally disciplinarian, we might see the world then as everything being right and wrong. This is the right way to do it, that's the wrong way to do it. So therefore, that part of our personality will become exaggerated. So the psychodynamic approach says that our personality is made up of these 3 factors, and how these 3 factors are influenced and developed in our early childhood will make our personality as adults. So perhaps that selfish person that you may know, maybe their id got everything it wanted, so it made that became a strong part of their personality. Or maybe somebody, like I said earlier on, was brought up in an exceptionally extreme disciplinarian house where everything is right and wrong, nothing in between. But I bet that the majority of you were brought up in a well-balanced environment, and that means your id, ego, and superego that make up your personality are in balance. And then there you have a very likable personality. However, not everybody agrees, because according to the behaviorist approach, which is quite a different approach, it actually states, no, it is the environment that influences the development of our personality. It is not it's not made up of 3 parts like the psychodynamic approach says. It actually says the environment is the most important. Now, according to the behaviorist approach, we are born with no behavior. And that includes we're born with no personality. We need to learn our personality from how we interact with the environment. It's not made into 3 different parts. It is how you interact with the world and how your behavior is learnt, how it's reinforced. Are you always carrying out a behavior that is seen as naughty, so you're always being punished? How do you think that will influence your behavior and your personality? If you're brought up in an environment where you're always receiving praise and reward for your behavior, how do you think that's going to impact on your behavior? So here we can see with the behaviorist approach, it says that it's environmental factors. We're born with no behavior. We have to learn to be the person we are and how we interact. And that means how our behavior has been positively or negatively reinforced will impact on who we become. So here you can clearly see, just by looking at these 2 approaches, they have quite different views on how we develop our personality. So you've had a little bit of insight into personality and a very brief look at 2 of our approaches and quite a very basic explanation of personality. But it's giving you a little bit of insight into some of the things we start to look at. Now, another area that I want us to look at, and that is that of the cognitive approach. Now, the cognitive approach, if we talk about cognition, that means it's to do with how we think. Now, according to the cognitive approach, all behavior is caused by the way we think. I bet you're already saying, that's quite different to the other 2 approaches. Yes, because they explain things quite differently. But now I want us to look at the whole idea that something affects every single aspect of your life. Be you consciously aware of what's happening, even in your dreams, when you're sound asleep, your memory is actively allowing you to understand what's happening around us. So, when it comes to understand the way that our cognitive abilities work, research has allowed us to understand how our mind and our memory work. And that's why the scientific part is so important, because it allows us to study our cognitive processes. So it allows us to make sense. And once we've got that evidence, we can make our theories, but also it allows us to perhaps understand why someone has perhaps abnormal behavior when it comes to their thought processes. So research has allowed us to understand cognitive abilities and allows us to create new theories and support our existing one. Now, I'm going to introduce you to one theory. It's what's called a theoretical model. Now, we use models in the cognitive approach because it is very difficult to actually see a person's memory. Can you see your own memories? No, you can't. So we create models so that we can have a visual representation of what our memory does, how it processes information, how it stores the information. So the multi-store model of memory states if we pay no attention, we will have no recognition of what's happening, be it the person, an event, whatever it is. So according to the multi-store model of memory, attention, that means we need to be able to draw our attention to it so that we become consciously aware of it. Then we can acknowledge it and actually then deal with it. Now you might kind of think, Mrs. Smith, that's a bit strange. Let me explain it a bit further. So here we have the cognitive approach. The cognitive approach says that every single bit of information in our environment, so external, the environment we're in, not in the whole world, just the environment that you're in, like your bedroom or the living room or in your classroom, everything in that environment, you are taking that information that's in your visual representation, you will be taking that information on. And then it goes into the sensory memory. Now, the sensory memory is a memory that we're completely unaware of. We cannot consciously be in that. But everything from our, and it's called the sensory memory because everything from our senses, touch, taste, hearing, sight, sound, everything that's happening within our environment is going into our sensory memory. But we're unaware of that. It is only if we pay attention to that stimulus will it then move from the sensory memory into what's called the working memory, and that is known as the short-term memory, STM, the short-term memory. Paying attention is utmost important. Now, let's do this little task. I presume everybody's probably got a long sleeve jumper on or top on. Put your arms straight out in front of you, right? Then I want you to turn your arms inside your jumper. Can you feel your skin against your jumper? Yes, you can, because I've made you pay attention. But prior to that, you didn't actually feel the, unless it was making you itch, you probably didn't feel it at all. The reason being, you didn't pay attention to it. It was already in your sensory memory. Your skin was picking that up. It was getting picked up by your sensory memory. That's how that feels. But you consciously were unaware of it because you didn't pay attention. Another example is you can walk down the corridor, a busy corridor, and one of your mates walk past you, and then the next minute you get a whack on the side of your arm. They just say, I just said hello to you. You're so rude. You didn't say hello back. And you said, but I didn't see you. No, oh, yeah. Technically, you were in their sensory memory, but because, again, you didn't pay attention to them, you didn't see them. I've done that plenty of times. I've walked past my mum in the street, and then she says, you walked right past me, and it was only when I would hear her calling that actually she was there. So attention is really important. So if we pay attention, it will then move into our working memory, our short-term memory. Now, our short-term memory can only hold information for a short period of time, and it is limited in its capacity. So it can only hold information for a short period of time, and it can only hold actually between 5 to 9 pieces of information. Here's a nice exam hint for you then. Take this on board. Short-term memory is the memory that you're working in now. If you're doing some revision and you have tons and tons of information in front of you, you're not going to take it all in at once. One, you've got to pay attention to it. But two, your short-term memory can only hold so much information at one time. Exam hint, do your revision in chunks. Chunk your information together so that you're not overwhelming your short-term memory, because you're just not going to remember it then. Now, in order for us to remember that information, we have to, in our short-term memory, rehearse the information. Because if we don't rehearse it, the information goes. That's why revision and repetition is really important. To get information to be transferred into our long-term memory, we need to attach some form of meaning, and we call that semantic encoding. Now, semantic encoding says attaching a meaning in order for it to be stored and logged into your long-term memory. Now, your long-term memory is a permanent storage. We actually never forget, even though we talk about forgetting. We can forget from the short-term memory, but from once it's in the long-term memory, we don't actually forget. We just sometimes find it difficult to remember. But in order to get it into the long-term memory, we need semantic encoding, which means we need to attach meaning. Here's another nice exam hint for you. When you're doing some revision, make it meaningful. Understand what it means. Can you describe it in your own words? If you can describe it in your own words, you're starting to attach meaning to it. Oh, this module really allows us to understand how to actually revise better. But coming back to this, here we can see a theory of how our memory works from right at the start till we finally store information into our long-term memory. So let's put your memory to test. In front of you, you can see a collection of pictures. I am now, please don't write anything down, no cheating. I am now, once I finish talking, going to give you 30 seconds to remember what is in front of you. So please don't write this down. Come on, it's not fun cheating. So your 30 seconds is starting now. Right. Let's get your piece of paper. I'm going, and your pen. How else are you going to write? I'm going to ask you some questions about what you've just looked at. So question number 1. What is the number on the top of the dice? Well, it should actually be die, because die is single, dice is plural, but I just thought I'd put dice there. So question number 1. What is the number on top of the dice? Okay, moving on to question number 2. How many bananas are in the bunch? How many bananas are in the bunch? Question number 3. What is the shape in the middle of the biscuit? What is the shape in the middle of the biscuit? Question number 4. What colour is the shoelaces? In the shoes, obviously. What colour is the shoelaces? Question number 5. The house has how many windows? The house has how many windows? Question number 6. What is the colour of the middle drawing pin? What is the colour of the middle drawing pin? And our final question is, what is the picture that we have not asked a previous question about? What is the picture that we have not asked a previous question about? I'll give you a moment if you haven't had enough time to just have a look through the questions again. I'll just give you a little bit in case you've not had enough time to answer one, and then you can answer. Right, it is answer time. Let's see how well you have done. So question number 1, what is the number on the top of the dice? I'm sure you all saw it was a number 6. Question 2, how many bananas are in the bunch? There were 4 bananas in the bunch. What is the shape in the middle of the biscuit? Come on, you all knew it was a Jammy Dodger, and Jammy Dodgers are famous for their heart shapes. It was a heart. What colour is the shoelaces? Well, if you probably remember, the shoes were black and the laces were yellow. Getting tongue-tied there. The house has how many windows? It had 5 windows. Next question, what is the colour of the middle drawing pin? There were 5 drawing pins, but what was the colour of the middle one? It was yellow. Come on, how are you doing? Final question. What is the picture or pictures that we have not asked a previous question on? Can you remember? There were 2. There was a bell and cars. There were 3 little cars and a bell. So how well did you do? Now, my question to you. So you've done your questions. Did you get 6 out of 6? 4, 3, 2, 1? The big question here, according to the multi-store model of memory, all the information about each of the pictures was going into your sensory store or your sensory memory. They were going in there. But what you didn't do was pay attention to specific aspects of it. So if you got that question wrong, it's literally said you didn't pay attention to it. You didn't see that detail. You may saw there was 3 cars, or there was 5 drawing pins, or there was a gold bell, but you might not have picked up there was, that the middle drawing pin was yellow, or the pair of shoes had yellow shoelaces. So you didn't pay attention, and because you didn't pay attention, it literally didn't go into the short-term memory. So really, paying attention is so important for us to actually access the information that we are receiving. Memory is a great module that we do at A-levels. It really does explore the different theories of our mind, of our memory. It explores how we forget and how we remember. It explores a great area of eyewitnesses and how good are they at being able to recall information. Well, just looking at the task you did, were you that great? So it's a great module. It really does help. And actually, there's a lot of it you could take to learn about memory and say, actually, if I did this with my revision, I would become better at it and also remember it. So our time's almost coming to an end because I'd love to keep you for much longer. So it's time to bring your taster session to an end and just give you a little bit of an overview of the course itself. A-Level Psychology is a 2-year course and it is made up of 11 modules. We start with the approaches because you need to know the different approaches and how they view human behaviour, and that will allow and be your foundation for all the other modules. We do 6 modules in the first year and 5 modules in the second year. Now you might think, that's a lot of work, and yes it is. It is intense that way. However, the course is designed that you will get all the support that you will need to help you complete all of these modules and succeed in your exams. We have a variety of really interesting modules from psychopathology, and that's the scientific study of mental illnesses, to forensic psychology, to looking at romantic relationships, social influence that looks at why do we obey and why do we conform? Why does this behavior happen? The nice thing about the modules that we cover is that you can relate to them because we see this behavior around us either on a daily basis, we might experience it ourselves, or we see it through other people, or we're exposed to it in the media. So what we are studying is real human behavior. Now please note, you're not going to be able to walk out and analyze anybody, but you will be able to understand as to why this is happening. It is an exam-based subject, and we have 3 exam papers called paper 1, 2, and 3. Really exciting names. Each paper is weighted the same, 96 marks. In each paper, we approximately do 4 modules, and each module is worth 24 marks. Now, you might kind of think, Miss, that's not a lot of marks. On the grand scheme of things, no, it's not. 24 marks for a module. And this is what A-levels is like in general. There is a lot to learn within a module for the possibility of a question. However, don't go into panic mode now, because through the 2 years, you are taught the exam skills that will help you succeed. You're given support, revision sessions. We intervene in the areas that are particular to you to help you to develop your knowledge. So there is plenty of support out there. But remember, this is a 2-way system. You've got to be doing the contribution as well. You cannot just leave it down to your teachers to support you. you've got to meet us halfway. And that's the thing about A-levels in general. It teaches you to become this independent learner. And that's what we do in psychology. We will help teach strategies to allow you to become this independent learner. Like I said previously, it is an intense course. There is a lot of work. But ask some of my year 13s, do they enjoy it? What do they get out of it? It's worthwhile chatting to them. But you will find the vast majority of them say they find it very interesting. And there is quite a lot of year 13s that do go off and study psychology at university. Or they choose degrees that are going to have an element of psychology in. This is a great subject to take. If you're interested in people or pursuing a career that deals with people, A-level psychology will give you great insight into human behavior. And even if you don't take psychology specifically in a course after this, you will find at universities there are multiple courses that will have elements of psychology in, and you will have a strong foundation in it so that you will be able to succeed doing those modules at university. But also, in general, you will be able to understand why a person has done that. It will make you more understanding, more tolerant. It will make you the better person. Now remember, if you have any more questions, please send me an email here at South Hunsley and I will answer your questions. I really look forward to welcoming you next year into my psychology classroom. Take care and stay well.